So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Awaken to Purpose podcast. I have a very incredible guest today, Laura Carranza. She is a leading expert on relationships. She is a survivor of 40 years of narcissistic abuse, first from a parent, then a husband. After her recovery, she made it her mission to help others heal from the emotional and psychological damage caused by narcissists. Laura published a #1 best-selling book on Amazon called The Ugly Love, a survivor's story of narcissistic abuse in 2018. Her second book, Girl, Get Out, was released in 2020 while she was working on a YouTube channel with a local psychologist. Laura is now a life and recovery coach who speaks across the country, teaching men and women how to break trauma bonds, to heal and move forward. Welcome, 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 Laura. So excited to have you here today.
I'm so glad to be here, Vernell. And Vernell and I met in a class, started in November, and it was all about growth. And I think that's why we connected, because it is all about growth. Every day we can do at least one thing to help ourselves grow. And if you can imagine, after being raised by a narcissist, and then we typically marry one of our parents, and it's usually the unhealthy one. Yeah, I know, right? Because we have those unresolved issues. And that's exactly what I did. And then stayed with him for 16 years. Got a great son out of that relationship, but learned a lot. And I wrote that book, Ugly Love, just to help one person, if it would help one person. And I remember the first hour it was up, it became a bestseller, and I fell to my knees in my kitchen. And I thought, this isn't me. This is a higher power. This is about way more than just my little story. So
I'm so excited to have you on to kind of like talk a little bit more about being in a narcissistic relationship, just to unpack that for the listener. So can you define for us what that means and what that oftentimes looks like? Because some people might be in narcissistic relationships and they don't know it because they don't know what it means and they don't know what it looks like.
Okay, I can absolutely. So we hear that word narcissism thrown around a lot, or he or she's a narcissist. However, there is a true mental health disorder labeled narcissistic personality disorder. Psychologists and psychiatrists have this book of mental health disorders, and it's in this section called the cluster B personality disorders, and it's at the top of the list there. So it is a true mental health disorder, and there are 9 traits of narcissism. And if someone has 5 of the 9 in a psychological office, a psychiatrist's office, they're considered to really have this disorder. It's not curable. They can work on their traits or their behaviors, but it really is a mental health disorder that can't be treated with an antidepressant or anti-anxiety med or anything like that. So what it looks like, it's a giant mind game for the person in the relationship. There's something called gaslighting. That's another term that's thrown around a lot. And some of those phrases are, maybe you heard a spouse or a partner say something and you go, hey, that really hurt my feelings. And they go, I didn't say that. You must have misheard me. Get your ears checked. And you're like, wait, but I did hear you call me that. I did hear you say that. And you start thinking that you're the one that's crazy, but that's what they want you to do. They want to whittle down your self-esteem and self-confidence.
I think that was so good. I'm kind of reminded of in thinking about this idea of being in a toxic relationship and then kind of like being connected to someone who is a narcissist. And can you talk a little bit about that? Because what it sounds like is, for some people, is it may not sound as bad as what it really is. So it is someone who is like really controlling in some ways. And it doesn't necessarily come across as aggressive control. It can be more of a psychological thing. I used to call it the Jedi mind trick.
That's a great way to put it, Vernell. That is a great way.
I used to, that used to happen to me and in my marriage. And it was my best friend and I would describe it as, oh my God, he's doing the Jedi mind trick on us again. And at the time I really didn't see that as a bad thing per se until all those things start to add up over time. So can you talk about like how that could evolve into something that is more toxic in a relationship? And then like, how do you recognize these signs, these 5 signs of a narcissist?
First of all, there's so much. That was a great question. There's so much packed into that.
Mm-hmm.
So a toxic relationship doesn't necessarily have to be a relationship with a narcissist. However, every relationship with a narcissist is toxic, whether it's parent-child or partner-partner. This is how the parent-child relationship looks. In a normal, healthy childhood, we as children, just say I'm a little 5-year-old, our needs are supposed to be met physically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually by the parents. It is totally reversed. The child, even as young as the age of 3 or 4, is expected to meet the needs of the parent. So many of us have to go back and do reparenting of our very, very young selves. I'll show you this. My counselor will be proud of me. I had to buy a doll called Little Laura.
Okay.
And this is what I have learned. I'm reparenting still. When I feel myself repeating those patterns that I learned from the narcissistic parent, my mom, I have to go back and go, it's okay. You're not what she says you are. The parent always says you're not enough. This happens with partners too. They say that you're not enough. You're not worthy. I don't know how anyone could love you. No one is ever going to love you like I love you because you're so broken. So you start, I don't know if any of that resonated with you or things you heard.
It did resonate actually. And I think it'll probably resonate with a lot of people because you can enter into friendships and you can be in those friendships and people can make you feel bad about yourself just based on like, you never do that, right? Or, it makes you feel like, yeah, you're not good enough to do this thing. And so, yeah, it can happen in the context of different types of relationships that you're in, and then just kind of like being able to recognize what that looks like. And I think, yeah, for me, it wasn't quite as overt as that. I think it was more of being self-absorbed. Everything is about comfort, their needs, their comfort level. And then somehow, some way, it is about making you feel bad for who you are and what you're doing or the contributions that you believe that you're making.
Exactly. Narcissist, it's all about them. And then you couple that, it's one of the phrases I like to say, it's high control and low empathy. And sometimes there's very, very little empathy. It is all about them. They are going to get their needs met no matter how badly it hurts you, it hurts me, it hurts their children. If they need it, they're going to get it from you some way, somehow. And it destroys a person in the process because everything that you thought you knew about yourself, the narcissist begins to have you question. And you start thinking, yeah, I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. For me, it was like, he's right. No one's ever going to love me.
Yeah, that's so sad.
I better stay here. And that's how we get hooked in that cycle.
When did you have like your wake up moment, like your wake up call? Like you've been with this person for quite a long time. You've seen what it looks like from your mom, and then you enter into this relationship of marriage. So when did you get to a point where you're just like, I can't do this anymore. This is just too much. I'm not feeling good about myself or anything. And where was God in the mix of all of this?
Okay, I'd love to talk about God. I love God. I couldn't have done it without him. When I was 8 months pregnant, I waddled into this psychology clinic because I was a drug rep and we were selling medications to those doctors or talking to them about them. And one of the doctors had published a book on narcissism. And I was like, you're the author? Ooh, that's cool. Wow, I've never met a real author before. Will you autograph it? So I bought one, he autographed it, went out to the car, heaved myself in the car. It was huge. Read the first few pages of that book and I shut it and I started crying. And I said, Lord, I am pregnant with this man's child. This is my husband and this is also my mom. I said, I don't know what to do. And so I put it away and I just said, I'm going to have this baby and see how things go. So fast forward 7 years, things are terrible. I'm sleeping upstairs with the door locked or in my son's bunk beds because he was so abusive. He's screaming a lot. And as you can imagine, you've seen it portrayed on television. just hurling insults, calling me terrible names, terrible names. And my friend, I called my best friend at the time, and her name's Dale. And I said, Dale, and was crying and crying. It's like 2 a.m. She goes, I want you to get this book about abusive men. And it was a book by a psychologist, last name Bancroft. So I did. I downloaded it and read it cover to cover. I stayed up all night, and I'm like, this is what I'm married to. And this doctor basically said, you cannot change these people. I've worked with 1,000 abusive men, and in my 20 years, I've only seen 2 or 3 really work at changing. And I thought, there's my answer. And I began to really pray about clarity. And so I began to prepare for the next 3 years. I prepared. I met with an attorney. I started saving money in a shoebox in the closet. Wow. Did all of that. And God was showing me signs along the way, like that it was going to be okay. Like my corporate job, I started killing it in sales. He was telling me, you're going to be okay on your own. And then finally one day it just hit me. It was the Sunday before Mother's Day in 2015. And he was accusing me of just terrible things. And I was watching my son play in the backyard with a friend. And I was on my laptop checking email and making sure my Monday would start well, as we often do on Sunday afternoons. And he accused me of having an affair. And who are you emailing? All your boyfriends. I think you are in love with all of your customers, blah, blah, blah. And I shut my laptop, and it came over me, this peace. I said, I'm done. I felt it to my bones. I said, I'm done. I said, you need to leave. I'm not leaving the home. The attorney told me to do that. I said, go stay with a friend. He's like, I'll be back tomorrow. You can't make this without me. I filed for the divorce the next day, and God was there with me every step of the way. I would feel him. I would just feel his protection. And and I had hope. And that's what we all need.
I love it, Laura, everything that you're saying. I just, I'm thinking about women who may not have the courage to do what you did. Like, what would you say to them? What recommendations would you give to them if they're in the midst of it right now?
Absolutely. And as if I'm speaking to them, you are going through right now more than what most people go through in a lifetime. If you can survive this, you can survive ripping off the Band-Aid and leaving that abusive person, whether it's a man or a woman. Women can be narcissists too.
Yes.
You can do it. Some people couldn't get their head off the pillow after just surviving a day of what you've been through, because it's like your cortisol levels are up here. You don't know what you're walking into every day when you get home or when they get home. It's, you don't sleep, you don't eat. It's awful. It is just, so you can do it. If I can do it, and I was just the shell of the person I am now, you can do it. I've had friends leave with only like $400 to their name, and they have started an entire new life with little children.
I think I wonder too, because I know this was happening to me in some ways, is we start to create these stories in our minds that keep us anchored there. Kind of like, I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. And so that it keeps us there in that place of abuse instead of just saying, I absolutely can do this. I can make it on my own. I don't have to listen to this anymore. And I think I was telling someone, I was reading this article before, and it was about the 7-year itch. And the psychologist was talking about the reason why it's called the 7-year itch is because it takes someone at least that amount of time to muster up the courage to leave, that they've already felt it 7 years previously, but it just takes them a while to get there. And I just remember reading that, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, is that accurate? Is it true? Until I experienced it myself and I saw it. And I saw like my ex-husband go through that, where he was detaching himself from the relationship for me and things of that nature. And I think he finally got the courage to just say, like, I don't want to do this anymore. He had already started another life. But yeah, I love kind of like what you were just talking about. Now, I know one of the things that we talked about before we started recording was your new project of dating, like talking about dating after 40. And when you've been through what you've gone through and when you've been through what other people have gone through, can you share with us some life lessons that you've learned about maybe yourself and this idea of dating? Because I do agree that could be a whole new like platform, another book, multiple books that are coming from that.
Yes. Oh, so much. If your relationship ended, any relationship, right? Not just the collective you, if your relationship has ended, most likely there were reasons, and it was toxic in some way or form, shape or form. It's always good to heal. Even if you feel like the relationship ended amicably, there was no love left. We still have stuff from our childhood all the way through that we need to unpack. And it can be little stuff or it can be huge stuff, like what I went through. It's so important to unpack that before dating. So that's probably my first piece of advice. And my second piece of advice is when you get out there, if you have recovered from a narcissist or are recovering, you're going to feel like every slight or he didn't text me when he said he would, he didn't call me when he said he would, is you. Yeah, I can tell you resonate with that. It's not you. It's them. I had a guy look at my picture online. He's like, oh, she's beautiful. My friend Jen told him about me. And he's like, she puts God first in everything. And he's like, not going out with her? Nope. He goes, I'm a Christian, but my wife went off the deep end, putting God first before the family and this and this. And it hurt me to the core. I'm like, but it wasn't me. That's his stuff. That's his stuff he needs to unpack. So does that make sense? But you take everything personally and it's not you.
Yes, and yes, it makes perfect sense to me, because part of what I was thinking about, I think when I was hearing you say that, is that oftentimes what happens, you can have this traumatic experience in relationships. It doesn't have to be in marriage, in the context of marriage, that starts to shape how you think and how you see the world and how you see people all around you. And the sad reality is that when you go through something traumatic, people don't always go through the process to get healed. And what happens is they project whatever was happening in the previous relationship onto the new relationship.
Yes.
And so, of course, my recommendation is always use your singleness to get the healing that you need so that you can be whole and go into the thing that God has for you. Because I would hate for you to take the brokenness and the stories that you've made up in your head into the new thing, into the new relationship. Because ultimately, if you're broken, you're going to break aspects of that marriage and that relationship.
Right. And you just think about it. We all have baggage, if you will. And if you haven't worked through at least some of it, you're taking this person who's got a lot of junk, this person who's got a lot of junk, a lot of pain, and it's you put together and there's layer upon layer upon layer of pain that goes all the way back to childhood. It's hard to build a good, healthy relationship on that. It's not impossible, but that's why I encourage people to really do the work.
Yeah, Laura, I love that. So one of the things, both of us being coaches, that I always have to talk to people about is the difference between having a counselor or therapist and a coach, right? So anytime somebody's trying to, live in the past, or they have these triggers that have been undealt with, you need to have a counselor or a therapist. You don't necessarily need a coach at that point, because a coach's job is to pull out what's already on the inside of you. And if you have a distorted way of seeing yourself and the world around you, it's going to be hard to pull the best things out of you, so to speak. So I love that you kind of like touched upon that. Anything else that you want to share around just kind of like, your new project of, dating after 40, and then any more insights or tidbits that you can share with the listeners?
Let's see. I just started, so I'm working on my third book, and everything's going to build from there, because I've learned so much being single over the last 7 years. I read, and it's a book I want to recommend to everyone if you're single. It's called Single and Satisfied. It just came out in January. It's a pastor named Rick Wilkerson Jr. And the main thing that has stuck with me just in 3 chapters is Jesus was single and he changed the world.
Then
mic drop, right?
Yeah, you might as well just drop the mic right there. Yes, love it.
Yeah, because I don't know about you, I get questions like, who are you dating? Do you have a lot of dates? And I have started answering. first of all, if you don't want to tell people, don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the difference between a life coach and a counselor. We can advise you. A counselor wants to pull out of you, and it takes a long time what to do. But we can just tell you, you got two choices. You can talk about it, or you can stay quiet about it. And so I have started saying, just, not really, just dating myself, even though I've had a few dates. And remember, and I'll say that Jesus was single and he changed the world. There has not been one person who hasn't just gone, okay, and changed the subject.
I think it's just because of how culture looks at singleness. And so when I go on people's different platforms and, people are always asking, other women are always asking. And I pretty much say like, yeah, you can be single and you can feel so fulfilled in your singleness. And it doesn't mean that you feel lonely or alone. I don't feel lonely or alone in my singleness. I'm very focused. I'm very intentional. Everything for me feels very purposeful. God is in the place that he's supposed to be. And I feel like when God is present, like there's a fullness to your life. And someone else could be added to it, but I don't have to do that unless I choose to do that. And so I think oftentimes culture causes people to feel really bad about themselves when they're not in relationships. And a lot of people are in relationships and they're in relationship hell.
They are. And I have a story that relates to that. So, and I tell my girlfriends are always like, I'm just so lonely. My single girlfriends, I need a man. I'm like, okay, all the marriages in my neighborhood are perfect. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Let me tell you something. I was at the gym. This was several years ago. And I had a good friend that we would do the elliptical thing together side by side every morning for like 30 minutes. And one day she came in, she was rattled, Vernell, rattled. I said, what's going on with you? And she said, my husband and I, they've been married 20 years. We just had a huge fight and he even grabbed me by the neck and I was scared and he's really mad at me because I want to foster more kids. And but she went on. And I'm like, Michelle, you got to be careful, girl. You got to, get out of there if you need to and let him cool off. The next day on Facebook or Fakebook, she posted a picture of them. Happy anniversary to the love of my life. Thank you for the best 20 years I've ever had.
Okay.
So when I tell my girlfriends that story, don't think that every relationship you see in the mall at Christmas time or at the restaurant, it's not perfect.
First of all, I could have flipped back in this chair when you said fake book.
We'll also say Instasham. Now, social media can be great, right? Because we can reach people and they can reach us. We wouldn't have known about, Vernell and I met in this class with transformational leader Darius Daniels. I mean, he announced he was opening spots in his class and I waited till midnight when it opened and I was like, me. Learn about that without social media. So there's so many good things about it, but we've got to remember that there's so much fake about it too.
I think, first of all, I think so many different things. I think that we are living in a day and age of comparison. And when you compare yourself to somebody else's life, what is disrespectful to God? But I think the other thing, and it's so normal, we've normalized that idea of comparing how you want your life to look against oftentimes someone else. And what that causes is for you to feel bad about yourself. That is not what God intends. When you think about like social media, it's exactly what you described, Laura, which is there's so many beautiful things that are on there that can help you to grow into the person that God has called and created you to be. And there's some things that are on there that are not good for your soul. It's not good for your mind. It's not good for you to absorb those different things. And I see people all the time posting about their happy lives. And, I'm thinking, oh my God, I just saw you literally not that long ago. And you were so upset about your relationship. And not to say that, things can't get better, but there is a fakeness to it that you want to portray this thing. And the only reason, and I'm not saying that in judgment, I say that because I lived it myself. Like I posted some stuff like these happy moments when I felt like I was dead on the inside. I'm just going to keep it real. And so I think self-awareness is really important. And so, I would say that's something else to kind of like just be mindful of the fake book. And what did you call Instagram?
Insta sham, girl.
Insta sham, Insta sham, and Facebook. Yeah, that's just so interesting because I do think we get so caught up. And then also, Laura, have you ever done a lot of like online dating at all?
Oh, and I've stopped. I hated it. For me personally, and I'm going to write about that in my book, like, because I mean, you'll match with the guy. Oh, cool. You communicate for a few minutes and back and forth, or even a few hours. The next day, crickets. It's like shiny thing, squirrel. You know, it's new people come along, and it's just awful. It's not for me. I've met some good people through it. I have two of my boyfriends that I dated long term in the last 7 years. I met on Bumble, but there's also been a lot of heartache. What about you?
Gosh. So let's see. Just I feel caught off guard. I would say the last guy I dated, he said he was a believer in Christ, and you can believe in God and still be unequally yoked with someone. And that was absolutely us. And one of the things that the way in which he engaged was kind of polar opposite of how I prefer to engage. Very hyper, very loud. And it got to a point where I asked, like, is like this arguing thing your love language? Because it's not mine. I don't like to argue. I feel like you can respectfully disagree. It doesn't have to get very heated. But I think that was more of his personality. That wasn't online. I've never done the online dating thing. That's just not me. I feel like it's important to know who you are. I don't feel like it's a bad thing per se. It's just not who I am.
I've learned it's not me. It's just too much.
Yeah. And I think also at the time when I was dating too, I wasn't completely healed of certain things. So let me just say that, because when I saw some things that seemed similar to my ex-husband, I had a trigger and I had to go back to God with that. And so I'm okay sitting myself down and waiting for God to show me, to heal me into wholeness so that I can be a better me for the next person I encounter. And so it hasn't resulted in a lot of dating relationships because I feel like I'm really deliberate about it. When I start feeling like we're not on the same page, I'm quick to say it.
Yes.
This is not, and I can say it lovingly, like, this is just not really what I want. Doesn't look the way that I need it to look at this stage in my life. And I feel like it can be, amicable. Right. And so, yes. So I think once you've been with a narcissist, it is really hard sometimes, if you have not been healed, right, to open yourself up to love again. I always say, can you open yourself up to be hurt again? Right. Because love hurts, and it doesn't have, it's not damaging, but it's still, there's painful things that happen as a result of it.
Yes. A psychologist told me once, he said, even in the best relationships, your husband or your wife is going to hurt you unintentionally. Even so, yes, relationships involve pain. I mean, I have a 16-year-old son. Sometimes he can be 16 and it hurts my feelings.
I do.
Yeah.
My son hurts my feelings left and right.
Yeah. And they don't mean to, but they're just teenagers. They're just idiot teenagers, as my dad says, idiot teenagers.
They're teenagers. I love it. So as we start to kind of like wrap up this conversation, I love to always ask people some questions. Now, you've already kind of talked about, life lessons and things of that nature, but I want to ask you, like, what is one thing that you know about God that you wish the whole world knew?
He is right beside you all day, every day. All you have to do is reach out. That's all you have to do. And sometimes I even hold, he says he will hold you by your right hand, or with his right hand. I'll reach out and pretend I'm holding his hand when things are hard for me. And I don't do it where people can see often because like, what's she doing? But yeah, he's right there. And once you hear him speak to you, you will never be the same. And as long as I've been a believer and I had a profound moment this summer where I went to him on my hands and knees with limiting beliefs. And, I've shared some of those with our group that we have. And I was just sobbing. And I said, God, I need to know what you believe of me. And he answered. And I gave him all of my limiting beliefs and he answered. And I know it was him because he used words I would never use, like tenacity. And yeah, it's life changing when you know he's right there. We just have to get quiet and be with him.
Oh, I love it. I love everything that you just shared and said, and I absolutely agree. So if people are looking for you, Laura, where can they find you? Where social media, any type of Instagram, your YouTube, and don't
forget website will take you to all of that. It's
love it.
We just redid it. It's www.lauracarranza.com. So,
and I will put that in the show notes for people, just so you guys can click on that. And please definitely check out her YouTube channel. She has some really great content on that. Definitely purchase her books, and expect to be one of the first folks to purchase her new book, Dating After 40.
I'm going to have you on my podcast when it starts in August. So
love it. You know, I would absolutely love that. Love that. Thank you again, Laura, for joining us today. And I just wish you all the best.
You're a special
love and life.
Thank you so much.